현재 방울이 짜고 이제 같이 공급이 조금 썰고 봐.
네.
이게 이제 한가고 제법
So we'll start with the Heart Sutra in English on page 2, as we generally do. Thus I have heard. At one time the Blessed One was dwelling on the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of a lineage trained who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They need to decrease their own mass. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no end, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra which calls all suffering should be known as truth for its not disciple. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisattva. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, who had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the blessed. Lamadam Pujetsun Jampe Yamajasemo Kangi Lodro Jini Tende Nita Nanda Mansebe Chini Dungu Jiji Jiji Niki Tuka Levanse Kanda Sive Soramare Munton Dunya Jizere Tozo Gona Puji Tase Yama Tuju Yangdensu Tudra Chedo Nyamo Nilo Leyi Chado Doze Ching Mari Mese Dunye Yugu Chinye Chuze Redina Dene Taji Saju Taso Yunte Luzo Gyose Tuo Chuda Chuda Chuni Denre Talu Mese Jambe Yamadu Om Mahapasanadi Om Mahapasanadi Seden Chigi Kerabusegi Talu Timo Mahaprasene Kana Dinju Shunglu Tobayi Lodro Pobe Nawa Selu Continue with the short mandala offering on page 16. Saji Koye Choshie Tomora Rira Mechie Vite Yamadi Sanje Chilu Vite Uvahi Toko Nanda Chima Chuparsho Jetsun Mama Nampa Kina Ye Chu Kala Jese Trinjine Chidra Tsambe Duje Zemala Sagi Chuyi Chawa Duso Jena Mela Continuing with refuge prayer, page 22. Sanje Chodam Sohi Chonama Chanshu Prabhu Dani Yasusaji Dani Jinji Sotamaki Trola Benji Sanje Druva Sho Sanje Chodam Sohi Chonama Chanshu Prabhu Dani Yasusaji Dani Jinji Sotamaki Trola Benji Sanje Druva Sho Sanje Chodam Sohi Chonama Chanshu Prabhu Dani Yasusaji Dani Jinji Sotamaki Trola Benji Sanje Druva Sho. Oh yeah. Lasso Tanga Zo. Decoina. What are we doing? Get a moment in my quantity. They think you will take it on. This is not. How about now? Can it tell you something? Go to Alice? Yeah, it's fine. Oh, yeah, cut it. 당연히 시정의 기승의 흉물들이 아니 제전 초기해야 되는 아니 그저 좀 제수 제바대로 와지
꾸준히 제조 되네 아니 걔네 가르치고 그래서는 아니 진보다 수준을 넣으려고 했어야지 아니 다 당보디 수준을 당보다 나라도 넘어서지고 당보 야식은 수준을 넣어야 돼 그래서는 미기 좁은 그 수준인데 제 미기 주디 계산하고 로로지 조사하지 미기 주디 로로지 조사하지 다음 가서 그래 제린 조건안에 동당세야 동세야 다 진보 동야 돼 다 책지 주보들이자 대 그래서 나는 고백 표조라야 차심에 버지 진보다야 되리자 진보다야 돼 간데서는 안에 책지에 책지 주보디 롱주 요와 닝부 메케네스 개론 transitina 시에남라 진보 출신 제기 바로도 진례심에 니조 마치 소스르샤 다수술에 노롱주 다리지 노롱주 다지 그거 요지 여대바 돼서 아니 제 다리를 야다 배주다야 자만도 신다기 아니 되네바 펜도스케 메르다 되네바 지기 치마 편제라 펜도지 지기 예비이나 아니 다단지 미국과 주송네 아니 지기 치마 하미 고반제 도바 지기 제로 다 하미 고반제 도스나 하미 고반데라야 롱주 표준 소바지 정말 야보로 다단데디 개와 데라야 롱주 표준 소바 유야디 지기 치마라 케야게 탑시지 가르치고 그래서는 다들 데라야 냐 대비나 아니 다대기 체대 세주도 아니 노롱주디 냠도라 다 다가랑 하나 가르고 다 스스로 이마데 가르고 다 미신다가 롱주치기 있나 가르치기 있나 대조하면도 저기 스스로 마마라 스스로 체대 가르도 스스로 노롱주 정말 다디 지디 침말라야 케조야기 탑시지 가려요라서나 아니 체다르기 노롱주 요와 대 아니 닝부 요바지 수수니 침말라 케야지 탑시 가려요라서나 아니 진바다야 드레스 현의 진바다야 돼
So we have discussed on the importance of the practicing what we call the continual mindfulness of the six objects. Right? That is, I think it's in verse 4 where it says, the triumvirate has proclaimed six objects for continual mindfulness. The sixth object, the continual mindfulness, which talks about how to be mindfulness of three jewels, giving discipline, ethical disciplines, and the gods. So be continually mindful of the mass of good qualities of this. So out of this, we talked about how to be mindfulness of the three jewels during our previous session. And then we also discussed on the importance of observing ethical disciplines of what we call observing the 10-fold paths, 10-fold virtuous path. And we went through those 10-fold virtuous path individually, and we talked about the nature of that 10-fold virtuous path, and the importance of observance of those 10-fold virtuous path during our previous discussion session. And then now we're reading this, we're on verse 6 that actually emphasizes on how to engage in the practice of giving, which it talks about importance of practicing generous giving, which was the practice of generosity that is mentioned in verse 4. So here, when it comes to the practice of generosity, how we should think of our positions and so forth. It's mentioned in this the verse 6, where it says, verse 6, where it says, having realized that positions are transient and lack any essence, be changed in a proper manner towards monks, Brahmins, and your king. For the hereafter, there's no better friends than generosity. So now, the reason why we are actually importance of practicing and observing tenfold virtuous path is to mainly focus towards attainment of high rebirth, 3 high rebirths, as we are all familiar with. The rebirths of human beings, devas, and demigods. Those are the 3 high rebirths within the cyclic existence. So now, having attained those 3, either one of those rebirths, due to our practice of observance of this 10 virtues, of 10-fold virtuous path, and not only that attaining those high rebirth is important, but also importance of having resources to engage in the practice of generosity. Without having any kind of resources, one may simply will not left anything to be given to others. So in order for one to have abundance of resources in the future, the only method in which we can carry out is to practice generosity at this time. Without engaging in the practice of generosity in this lifetime, irrespective of how wealthy you be, how abundance of resources that you may have at this point, when it comes to our death, we will not have a power to take anything that you own. So therefore, in order for one to have all those resources and wealth in the future, to engage in the practice of generosity, one should engage in the practice of generosity this life. And this is the only method in which one can, emulate one's practice of generosity in our future life.
오늘 텐데기 진바동양이 다 진바당고이나 다 진바당양이 수단 수 강나 당고래서나 진바당세 유디 결혼체 참스 대니디 연행의 생성 결혼단 참스니체 결혼세도 좀 말이야 좀되지 니들 rab도 중앙에서 아니 내가 입에 있다 니공 아니 세소님 시에 피기와 텐데기 결혼하체 근데 잠스스도 좀 말이야 아니 요즘 초시 전지 야 신나서는 검토를 잡 텐데지 되게 야 결혼 마이나 텐데지 되게 이제야 안 잠스스네 세 장마세 텐데지 되게 이제야 잠스지 다 되니디체 결혼체 잠스체 집어집에 유디 아니 찜바스도 다 우봉 지 소백강의 유기 텐데체 대단님도 내봐 찜바다 내봐서도 다 가서 그래 동해 유게 봐 텐데체 다 되네 다 시남스 되는 말랑게 게게 파마 대졸라야 아니 최고 그셔집이 유 어디냐 아니 진바 당세 유진들 당고래서 와 진단 시남바스 아니 진바 출신 제기 있으러 와 진바 진도 좀 말이야 진바 파기나라야 다 렌제 팀에나라야 아니 귀비 진바세 모두 주주로 나로 귀비 진바세 대라양 공부로도 진바 출신 제기 진보 출신 제기 수도 좀 말이야 진보 밤 진보 당도 좀 말이야 수수가 가르치기 유비나 거기 내보다 냠다다 가르치기 있는 거라 진보 90전에 약보전에 받대고 뭐 저기 아니 이 장도 가보 된대전에 다 아니 지 통중다 된대전에 받대면 받들 진보 출신 제기 있어와 8월도 진례시면 연주마지 소스 지금 8월이야 되네 봐 지금 8월 아니 수술에 내려지 다 신다지 간티야 요마 케야 요마도 단다 되네 진보 진비나 아니 지금 8월이야 되게 진비 지부디 수술에 롱주 증거 인자 지금 8월이야 수술에 지금 내려 야보지 그거 이유나 지금 치마들라야 수술에 지금 펜도 지금 야보지 그거 있나 세타리 진바 단계 있나 지금 치마들라 소소로 롱주 증거와 제자 아니 지금 치마들라야 진바레시 메뉴 요 말레스 되는 숨부레스
Second, we talk about the importance of practicing generosity or giving, the generous give. And then the next, it talks about to whom we actually, practice our generosity, object of practicing generosity, in other words, to whom we should give or practice generous giving. So here then it says, monks, Brahmins, the poor, which also includes sick person or individual who's undergoing suffering of sickness, of any kind of sickness, and your kin, including one's friend, teacher, parents, and so forth. So those are the individual to whom we should practice a practice of generosity or generous giving. And monks, in the past, monks are normally live their life, day-to-day life on alms. They'll go for alms every day, and they will not have any positions of having anything as their wealth. But their day-to-day life of their meals, their daily meals are dependent upon others' generous giving. This is how the monks should live, and this is how the monks are advised to live by the Buddha himself in the past. And then the Brahmins here, referring to the Brahmins who are living in the forest, who are being very contented. And those are the Brahmins that we're talking about. We're not talking about all those Brahmin castes, all kinds of Brahmin castes. We're not talking about that. Brahmins who are living, solitary retreat, who are being so contented, and so forth. Then the poor, as whoever is lacking any kind of resources, if one has it, one should engage in practice of giving to those poor, and the sick people, helping them, and giving some resources and so forth. And then your kin that we talked about earlier. It includes teacher, parents, friends, and so on. Right? And then for the hereafter, there's no better friends besides generosity. It is really true, because if one engages in the practice of generosity, as we talked about earlier, will then really become a causes or a condition for having a resources in one's future life. So therefore, not only that one should, it's very important that again be mindful of when one is engaging and giving, engaging in practice of generous giving. When one is giving, or when one is engaging in such practice, one should do so, it says, in a proper manner. It says one should, uh, you know, one should engage in the practice of generosity in a proper manner, which means with respect. Um, it's not something that you're just, uh, you know, we have a tendency of, when we are engaging in giving to someone, we have a tendency of having this contentious thought. We have some kind of attitude or contempt attitude towards others when we're giving. So this kind of attitude should be abandoned when one is actually engaging in the practice of generosity. It is for this when it says in a proper manner. It says in a proper manner. And similarly, Nagarjuna's precious guardian has also mentioned that when one is engaging in the practice of generosity, one should do so with respect.
that's it. Tsuji Dumbadi Chugi Tsudim Tsuji Dumbadi that Tsudim Lalabia de Reja, Tsudim Lalabia de Tsudim Lalabia de Chugi, Tsudim Manyam Mema Mate Mapa Pada Temper Zuz Techeta Te Kibu de Jusambolo Sumba in the Tapeji, make a Jurubung with Tsudim de Girwa. Teche, make a Jubung with Tsudim Lasobato, da Tene. 소다게 주림 창승이 주림 나 주림 되게 요르지 지난해다 이게 좁은 거 주림데 아니 개보 교육에서 주림데 만냥바 매매와 마제바 마바바 때문에 저스러와 아니 주림데 아니 예배 거서는 안 주림데 냠르고로 하거든 예배 마바바제 만냥바제 주림 만냠서야 돼 아니 야 추정의 소야되지 녀모바다 되려와 미기를 추정 승부에 돈도지 지야 돼 아니 추정디 저거 제와 녀모가 거라 녀모의 마법에 매매와 아체 아니 답변은 신앙이 뭐 저하고 대자기니 뭐 메도가 보면 알아서 뭐 되게 전에 추정 써야 될라야 아니 맞제바 알아 아니 추림숭야디 시원양대스리 점발이야 타바토야게 제도 추림숭바이다 아니 현다가 마바바야 추림숭야디 현다게 제도 추림숭바이베이나 대 바로라 현다게 주 해식으로 대대마 힘바지 시원양대게 제도 추림숭바이다 아니 마바바 안 때벌 제고레스 기부처럼이 추림디 숭고레 추림 마냠바 매매마 마제바 마바바 추림디 때벌 되고 그래서 생기지.
So next verse is the importance of engaging in the practice of moral discipline. It is outlines of saying the importance of practicing morality, which is the root of our liberation, what it says. And then the verse here we read with the verse 7, which says, we must entrust yourself to ethical discipline that are not compromised, not debased, not corrupted, and not transferred. It has been said that ethical discipline is the foundation for all goods, all qualities, as this is the earth for it, as is the earth for everything moving or unmoving, what it says. So here it says now, since the discipline, the moral discipline here, since this letter to friend is Nagarjuna has wrote this letter to his friend, the king Surabhibhadra, who is not actually ordained being, who is not a ordaining monks or novice. It's a lay people, a lay person. So therefore, in this morality is merely referring to the morality of individual liberation, pratimoksha, morality of bodhicitta, and morality of morality of prajnana. So this here merely referring to that. It's not referring to the fully ordained moral discipline, as this letter is directed towards King Surabhibhadra, who is not an ordained member. So then, it says, when one is observing morality, the reason why we're observing morality is to refrain from undergoing degenerations, declinations, or never compromise one's morality. And one should not, it should be free from stains, and always try to safeguard one's moral disciplines. Because sometimes one's moral practice may become mixed with reflections. That happens. We may want to show off in the gathering or the public gatherings that you are observance of the morality or the moral disciplines, and having an intention of making oneself very special among all the people who are in your surrounding, so that having intention of becoming yourself as someone very special person, so that you pretend to observe morality, and that kind of practice in morality is not actually practice in morality, but your very practice is mixed with affections, and that's not how we should do so. So once that word says, one should always, one's very purpose of engaging in morality or the moral discipline is to attain nirvana, or the peaceful state of nirvana, which is Shivanyangde. So therefore, one's motivation of engaging in practice of morality must not tainted by afflictions. It should be free from afflictions. It should be as pure as possible. It should maintain one's motivation, should maintain as pure as possible. Do not let one's motivation tainted by negative thoughts and emotions. It is therefore one's practice of morality will then become pure practice of morality. So then this will become a root cause of attaining peace of nirvana. That's all.
팀 승야의 된대기 지 개침부진 승고야 가르르스나 아니 산지 준비되게 가르 승요래서나 배나 사침부디 나라도 지 다디 지긴가 지신 나절로 소바 당 아니 밀어서 좋았는지 탐지 사시들라 되네 아니 나라도 대라된지네 여러 왔어 교와다 미규베 지게 다 교회 지게 수도 잠발라 심지 나라도 지기니가 요 심지 교와서나 다 대간게 사도를 달아서 버티죠 탐지 사침부터라 된지 되어 왔어 네데 여러 왔어 배된나신 나라도 교라야 아니 직dengi yunde ta tse taregi senata tendegi ane yundenche 직denle debe yunde 지 남친 기별 고반 토대비 윤대라 소바 대다 탐지 아니 당보디 추림송화 될라된지 추림 될라된지 아니 윤대 대다든지 계야 이브레스 윤대 탐지 시딘저보디 추림라된지 야기 우이자 당보 추림 될라된 아니 되네 야기 우이자 아니 윤대 군지 시딘데 아니 추림 이바디 산지 송부레스 어디에서 같은데 계층보
So why the Buddha has said that importance of that, observing moral discipline, ethical discipline, in other words. The practice of ethical discipline is something that is very, very important. So we find here the example of why it is important. It says in the verse 7 itself, it's been said the ethical discipline is the foundation of all good qualities, as is the earth for everything moving or unmoving, the moving and unmoving, or moving or unmoving. So just as the earth is the foundation of all animate and inanimate objects, so too moral discipline is as a basis of all our virtues, all our development, basis of development of all our spiritual qualities. Without having a pure moral discipline or moral practice, they simply have no foundation upon which one can one can develop our spiritual path. So it is therefore, Buddha has emphasized very strongly and importantly. In fact, it's a pivotal for one to observe moral discipline because it's the foundation of our spiritual qualities. So whether we're talking about the quality of the worldly spiritual quality or the transworldly spiritual qualities, are all based. All these qualities will take place on the basis of observing pure moralities, starting from the worldly qualities all the way to the state of omniscience or state of complete enlightenment. So it is therefore all those qualities, spiritual qualities particularly, are coming into being from the observance, pure observance, in other words, pure observance of morality, the moral disciplines. In other words, it says all the qualities, the positive qualities, will take place on the basis of laying the pure foundation of morality. So it is for this Buddha emphasized, time and again on importance of practicing, observing moral conduct or morality.
뭐야다 지지 개발에 기부 침별람 양설을 주고 그러자 기부 침별람 양설을 주고 하는 파르도 침보 조를 넣어야되자 디 진단 추림 수준 3대당 대신 시라 셈에 파르 진스 대다 기주 시비 기주 시비 가조이 파르 침바 개외 왕보로 쓰되 파르도 침보 좀 양설을 주더랬을
So now we move on to the next chapter, which is a chapter of practice of the great scopes, the practice of great scopes. Under the practice of great scopes, the practice here mentioned in this verse. The verse 8, where it says, generosity, discipline, patience, perseverance, mental stability, and likewise, discriminating awareness are the immeasurable, far-reaching attitudes. Expand them and make yourself into a powerful Lord of triumphant, who has reached the far shore of the ocean of compulsive existence.
디 군이 강배월 대청중들이 저는 강력하게 있어.
You can put a cushions under your feet if you're
fine.
So,
Yeah,
because it's
no, I'm
pretty
fine.
cold, so
It is cold.
yeah, you can put a cushion under your feet.
Yeah.
So
I'm fine.
I believe you.
Thank you.
I was brought up in the cold.
Oh, good.
We had no heat in the house, so.
Yeah, it is cold. That's true.
Until I was 7, we had no heat. Just one fire in the house.
The same thing with me too.
단지 가서래 당보 아니 산지게 때문에 걸어서 흉내를 아니 기부 중어다 되면 남기를 발라람니 아니 기와 지금 원독이 남이 고방게 치도 아니 미그 주봉고 주림나 속아 송야디 기부 주목이 다 되면 남체 다데네야 지 랑콩베레지 또스 당내 아니 엠바시다 데데이나 주니라 소베고네 시비 코바 시비 갸조텔라야 아니 지 가와기위나 닝보 메바데지다 지 통네 아니 단지 마르바 빵네 담에도 비셔 토바체네 데네 아니 타르바 시와 타르베 고반 토바 지와 지야데다 기부 딩단 투모메 남지를 말해지체 대기부 딩단 투모메 남지를 말해지체 되네 다되네 랑 시비 가서 시보급에 동네에 타와 있나야 아니 통면에 라라 튕겨면 막이 신지되다 아는 고변하나 샤네 란지부 아니 시보 가서 그래 다 시보 되는지 제비나 되려야 아니 랑야 아니 타르바 니제바지마 도토야 말에 아니 생기 되냐 중요 말에 되지 말이야 아니 다 가서 그래. 랑자 맞에 신심지 탐지에게 된도 남긴 기회 고방 토바치기 인스로 신심지 탐지 아니 시워코에 동네를 되지 남긴 기회 살아 고바 치고도 대지도 아닌 나라 남긴 기회 고방 토바치기 인념에 셈진대지 쓴다 지 제니 용원도 좀 말아 다 되려야 아니 셈데 주마만 봐 주는 기운도 좀 말아야 아니 되려야 chanchukir sim yule ki baasini, tijin baasini, otilis siyung biyoris.
So earlier that the practice we have talked about was the practice or the path that's shared with the person who has a modest scope of motivation or the small scope motivations, which actually engages in the practice of abandoning the 10 known virtuous actions and observing 10 full virtuous actions and having a genuine aspiration to attain high rebirth in one's spiritual life. And then the second one is the path shared with the middling, or the person who have a middling scope, motivations, what is called, shared with the middle scope motivations, which are based on the middle scope motivations are based on understanding of Four Noble Truths, 12 links-dependent originations, having thorough understanding of those teachings of Four Noble Truths and travelings of different originations, one generates a genuine disenchantment towards cyclic existence or the suffering nature of cyclic existence, and one understood very clearly there's no essence in the living in this cyclic existence, suffering nature of cyclic existence. It is therefore one then engages in the practice of meditating on selflessness to eradicate the cause of the cyclic existence, and gaining the realization of selflessness, direct realization of selflessness. So then this is what we call the path or the shared with the middling scope motivations. Middling scope, in other words. And then not only that, just by attaining liberation oneself is not appropriate because there are many beings, the countless beings, who has not been one's mother in the past, from the beginningless time up until now. They have been so kind to us. They have sacrificed their own comforts and took care of us in the past from the beginningless time. So it is not appropriate to neglecting the needs of those beings. So therefore, I must not only to free myself from this suffering nature of cyclic existence, but also I must do something to liberate all those sentient beings, the mother sentient beings, to liberate all sentient beings from this suffering nature of cyclic existence. It is therefore I must engage in the practice of bodhicitta to attain complete state of enlightenment, to establish all sentient beings to the state of omniscience or the state of complete enlightenment. It is due to this practice, consistent practice of such, altruistic intention or altruism. When this altruism arises within one's mind naturally, without any requirement of efforts, then one is said to be entered into the Mahayana path. So then one is actually taking an actual responsibility to overcome the suffering of other sentient beings.
어디에 있는 좀 말이야. 당보 창조선들은 유래 개발이야 면에야. 좋은 간에 전에 샘리리 전에야 장내 마용나나 헛도 갈아야 창조선 검네. 아니 창조선 직진이 버지랑 게 길게 개 앞에 갈에 가버렸어. 인제 좀 말이야 나그네야 당보 아니 다 가서다 고 당보도 주변에 대존이 간에야 전에 아니 지금 신도 장에 아니 제텔란 님보면와 세치말란 님보면와 코로와 텔란 님보면와 근데 야동제 아니 당보배데 코와 타다는 님보면와 신디 좀 말에 이중의 삼바 주마마 이바디 얘기 안데네 대가나야 되니 라도메기 남주디 신기 가나 바빼네 아니 신동에게 남주선네 텔레야 아니 장바다 닌지라 소바기 아니 되네 신네 아니 chanjusem yule kia jere stage de bang je jangnamado thambogorane jangnamado thambogorane chanjusem gomdena ani kia khaporis.
So when it comes to practice of bodhicitta, as we talked about earlier, in other words, the naturally arising altruism will not enter or will not be able to generate from no cause. It doesn't come into being from nowhere. It requires a rigorous practice, effort. So this begins from, in order to generate pure bodhicitta, or authentic bodhicitta, in other words, one should begin from practice of difficulty of finding this human life, human rebirth, difficult of obtaining human rebirth. And once it is found, then one should also understand it is not permanent. So therefore, in other words, one should reflect on the rarity of finding or obtaining human rebirth. Once one is obtained, then one should also understand it doesn't last long. It is ephemeral. It undergoes transition without a break. So then think about, then with this understanding, one will then lead oneself to a strong development of not having essence in this life as well as the future life of cyclic life or unlimited life. In other words, one become completely disenchanted by this overall cyclic life. With this, then will emulate oneself to generate renunciations. And once one is able to generate renunciations, then the very generation of the cause of generation of renunciation is to recognizing one's own suffering, right? And having a genuine aspiration to free oneself from this cyclic, this sufferings, and try to, reach beyond the cyclic existence, beyond, the suffering nature of cyclic existence. And the very mind that you have is kind of self-directed. Now the next, what we should do is the very recognition of this suffering, we should do to reverse this towards other sentient beings. Thinking of all sentient beings have similar suffering, experiencing of suffering that I experience. So it is therefore just just only myself, gaining liberation is not sufficient. So therefore, I must think of suffering of all other sentient beings. And this will then lead oneself to the practice of love, compassion, will then finally lead to the resolute intention, which will then be proceeded to generation of bodhicitta. This is how we should practice, how we should learn. And it is through the process of proper learning will then enable us to generate bodhicitta. Because without just going through all those processes, one will not be able to generate bodhicitta just by thinking, I must obtain bodhicitta, I must generate bodhicitta. Just praying and wishful thinking will not enable us to generate bodhicitta.
어디네 이제 좀 말이야. 다다. 계속 좀 시발하게 진중나라야. 다 특지도 들으면다. 아니 뭔지 그 응응들로야 아니 대답이 잔죽이 선들 소속에 돈달라야 밀람라야 메뉴요 말했어. 대답이 자주 선들. 남지 계획 고반 토바차고 냠에 셈들 소속에 제도 늘라야 뭐서다 삼로가야 파셔 밀람도야 메뉴요 말했어. 현도도 갈라지스 나라서 다 상마 직버지 자리에서 뭐지 남제 기회 고반 터버 지기 이 3분절 상로지 전혀 권유 요모를 생각하더라야 텐데 송자 소소게 치도 상로마고 다 시스템제 된도 간내지 좋아 텐데 이제 좀 발라야 자주 있습니다 저도 다 건단다고도 말한서 제를 뭐 지금 승관하지 간신신의 미과장배 이나 안에 연구 말했어 제장 림바 신도마 장내로 와 남림바 신도마 장내 당보 대조 된지니가 되는 거베 내 동에 되는 거베님에 되는 뭐 방신의 장내 안에야 개비는 실증 야보지 신이 상황지 랍더마스나 진짜 신이 상황지 도메나 따다지야 랍더 등거와 대도마스나 진짜 제는 모두 지금 말아서 간신신의 전주성 공부는 안에 기게 있어 말했어.
So it is said again by the Shantideva has stated in his Guide to the Birds of Life. If you look at ourselves at this point, it seems that let alone that we have actually, generated this a genuine aspiration to attain enlightenment for the other sentient beings. We haven't even thought of generating compassion for oneself. Because when you look at ourselves at this point, it is so hard for us to think about that. As if there's not even having an imprint of doing this. We have to remind us time and again, even while we are reminding us. It is even when one was trying to remember to practice this, we're unable to carry out this practice properly. So that really tells us that, let alone that we think of other sentient beings in the past, we couldn't even think of ourselves to free ourselves from cyclic existence. That's what it's mentioned in the Guide verses of life. So it is therefore why this is happening is because we have not gone through the proper training of ourselves in the past. So therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa stated very clearly, practicing bodhicitta or generating bodhicitta must go through a proper procedure, go through the process in a very sequential order of the process, starting from contemplation on understanding the difficulty of obtaining this, precious human rebirth, and reflecting on the suffering nature of cyclic existence in general, and reflection on the suffering nature of cyclic existence, particularly of the lower realms. With this, will then lead oneself to understand there's no essence. Will enable one to understand there's no essence in this cyclic existence whatsoever, regardless of where we may take rebirth, in any places or in any directions that where we may go in our future life. There's no essence. And by finding this genuine, sense of not having essence in this cyclic existence, will enable one to generate a strong disenchantment with this cyclic existence, will then lead oneself to generate renunciations. This is how we should start our practice of bodhicitta.
어딘데 있는 좀 말이야. 다 근데 있는 좀 말이야. 걔는 전부 검자는 가보러 아니 지 자주 쓰는 것들이 검야가 배지치기 이나니 인간아서 라마체보다 연대시 유로마다 다 늘나는 지지도 가래 님을 지지를 제제네 도스 검매이나 지지지 마교한 된다는 상로단에 대 가만히 숨들에 검야 대와마 지지디 조그 지 상로단이나 칸에 마교이나 대 상로단이나 아니 지 가서 그래. 내가들라 지금 공자야 돼. 변형 첨부. 아니 셈마 용리리지 태용으로 아니 밥자지 성부샤로 그랬어.
So it is, therefore, we should meditate on bodhicitta. Meditation is one that makes familiarize oneself with the practice or any practice such as renunciation, bodhicitta, and so forth. So therefore, one should take time in meditating on bodhicitta by reading the verses of Lama-Chopa, as well as the verses of all good qualities, foundation of all good qualities, and try to first, we cannot just read all the verses, but try to read one verse and try to understand the meaning of that verse, and then reflect one's mind upon it and meditate on it. And then one for a couple of minutes, and then one should move on to the next verse and read the next verse, either mentally or verbally. Then reflect one's mind upon this meaning of this verse and meditate upon. And in this way, one will be able to implant a potency or the imprints of generating bodhicitta.
Lama Chopa기 신조 담반네마 Lama Chopa기 신조 담반네마 전에는마 동학의 람 용조로 차상화라 시작음시야 빼면서 여보 되나네 아니 기부 준비를 남이 가도 되려야 아니 로종기 냠내치야 되는마 빼면서 차상부 세도서 너무 여보 쉬우지 그랬어.
So, particularly the abbreviated path, stages of the path in the Lama-Chopa, which actually encapsulates entire practice of both, sutra and tantra. And particularly in that verse, abbreviated stages of path, the verse, when it comes to the verse of practicing of the great scope practitioners, it is very beautifully mentioned about how we can train our mind, how we can practice our mind, training of our mind, and how can we really become a great scope practitioners. And those are very, very, effective verses for us to carry on our day-to-day practice, spiritual practice.
그것도 검자기나 당한전이 Lama Chopa도 좀 마사비 관계를 좀도 검자 뜻을 알게 됐어. ken 검자기나.
So are you familiar with all these verses? Are you meditating at this point when you're reading through?
We are bad students.
So, or we're just trying to finish it, reading. So this is what it happens most of the time.
We try and be good.
So that's the question. You guys meditating or not?
We try. Yes. And Lama-Chopa is an important practice to master. So I know that I try to do that.
Well,
I have not done that yet, but trying.
It's always more profound than you think. This is the problem. And it's not the same in reading it in English, because English is, as a language, is not necessarily true. It doesn't have truth ingrained in it. The Tibetan has a structure which is, you can say something that's true, and it is not just logically true, it's actually true in the structure of the sentence. It can't be disproved. So we have a problem.
That's true. That's true. That's true. 그거는 지난해 교류치어와 이제 나와 교류치어와 그럴 때다 배우나 좀 그때 교육을 때 그럴 때는 배우나 예를 이제 지게 그게 난된되게 세상 참가하고 지고 왔어 이제 그게 그 책과 교체죠. 세계에 따다시 교육 따다리고 말했어. 뭐지 그 사회 책 사무실 때에 요한테 이게 책 사무실에 따다리고 말했어. 세상 군대 좋아야 돼 이게 뭐고 맞지.
Many years ago, Gangka Rinpoche gave a teaching to his students on Lama Chupa. He taught the whole practice. And when he was teaching it, he said, there are some people who feel that the Tibetan language is more proper for understanding Dharma. And then he said, I think this may just be a conceit. That was his opinion. So I don't know.
I'm not sure. This is, if you read Tsongkhapa has such a precise way of constructing the sentences that after you read the sentence, you know that there's no debate. That sentence is exactly what it means. It's true. And if you follow the logic of the sentence and you meditate on the logic of the sentence, then that's the only thing it can mean. It can't mean anything else. And that's very special. Philosophy in English often will generate lots of discussion because the language is imprecise.
문제는 또 코로나서 왜냐면 그거는 저기 남쪽은 지지 저장 나오면서 결국 벌써요 코로나서 진짜 남쪽은 지지 저장 나오면서 그 뒤에 다 그런 게 가르침도 수업에는 다 지금 미만지를 지게 다 노대 하고 하는데요. 지금 당시 장소식에서 거의 되신 거 같아요. 근데 중국어에 내게 되게 쓰다 말했어. 근데 라시아어 말했어. 이제 또는 세상 이제 영국에서 중국어 아니 근데 그는 그런 게임 있어요. 근데 그런 앤더슨이 되게 마시아스테 그 걔네 가전에 그 외인한 얘기가 이미 가세 교육을 했어야 되는 근데 제로지 송된도 마음이 교시한테 이게 지금 책도에서 나온다. 아니 이게 지금 이제 그 책에 써야 되는 그 이게 나한테 찾아지고 그게 대신 뭐 보지 마자 봐도 제로지 송된 다다시 봐. 이제 나 집에 지지 정도 되는데 세비시 이제 손상 그 외인한 이런 사고지 되게 문제스 그런 게 있어요.
안에
그거에 대해서 신고해.
안에 다들 된 얘기를 그제 그 베제트조라 나도지 소소 티니 요바다 매마도 좀 주요 잡을 좀 시비무다 티니 요바데 기행기 다들 로테데레서 다 제시한 지금 요로 대생나 가지고 있는 대대기도 다들 좀 나좀 티니 매마도 무슨 치코랑 단데 대시절에마도 지 인지 좀 시다 단도입니다. 어디 뒤다디 비다 인지나 유야 된저 다라는 이로.
Yeah, so it's all, we all, whether it's Tibetan or English for us, when there's a verse, it always requires some, explanation to it. Even in Tibetan, of course, sometimes the verses are very profound and sometimes it's so poetic. And then it requires a lot of explanation to it. And then especially the Tibetan, the poetic writings are not that easy to put it, literally translate into English. The nature of this poem
Yeah.
can't be literally translated. That happens, and it's a big struggle for many translators. And not all the translators, I think, just very good translators, even they say that it's not that easy to get into it.
어디에 이르다 자주심디 다 자주심 윤을 끼기지기 윤을 끼 사지기지 냠래 임백이자 단대디 치지 예버디 이나야 가서래 자주심이라야 다 무슨다 죽심 이체디 다다 주중나라 무슨다 주심 얘기 참을에 관해 샤그래서 무슨 세는 거라서 다 사지살로 조가 삼성지기 삼바지로 야 산지살로 저거 인소설은 지금 삼바드체 다 죽음스도 다 산지살은 무슨 조약이 자와 좀 받대 제니 무슨 다 주신 얘기 상점도 된대시 시작했어 직 저거 삼성의 삼바드체 직 안에 저거 야 산지살 조약이 자와 좀 받대 된대기 단단 준중나는 된대시 시작했어 잘 죽습니다.
So since we're on the discussions of the great scopes, the practitioner of the great scopes, we'll be discussing more on practice of bodhicitta, which is very important. So when it comes to practice of bodhicitta, one should have a very genuine interest, aspiration to engage in the practice of bodhicitta. By understanding the benefits of bodhicitta, that's a very, very important part. First part. It is therefore, when you look at Shantideva's guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, he importantly emphasized on the practice of aspirational bodhicitta first. And once one is able to perfect one's practice aspirational bodhicitta, one can then move on to the engaging bodhicitta. So in the text guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, he said a metaphor of someone who has intention of going and someone actually going there. Someone who is actually engaging in actions of going and someone who has intention of going. So intention of going to reach certain destination is needed. If someone who is not randomly going, if someone has a very specific place or destination to be reached, and that individual have a very good motivation or strong motivation to go there. With this motivation will then lead oneself to the journey to reach their destinations. Similarly, in order for one to engage in the practice of actual bodhicitta, one should first have a very strong aspirational bodhicitta. The practice of, in other words, the full form of aspirational bodhicitta will then only be able to engage in the engaging bodhicitta, practice of engaging bodhicitta.
다들 간다는 게 지금 봤어. 어딘데 왜 전주심리 장단들이야 아니 칸이 연구해서 아니 지진 참바 공부네 파바 통면에 마 주용적이 전주심 장단스나 공단 지유를 때려야 근데 내가 뒤에서 찍다 아니 지진 참배양네 제 아니 다다 지진 참배양체 아니 계세 시월하네 마 규적이 다시 냠지기 전주심 정당사에다가 준중나라 얘기도체 되네 다다 근데 내가 대우군에 자야 되다 파파 통면에 맞아지 근데 전주심 다 장단스나 수수규로 공단들에 니유레스.
As you are maybe familiar with, there's two kinds of practice of bodhicitta, right? There's two different order or two different lineages, we could say, of practice of bodhicitta. One is the bodhicitta practice instruction given by Maitreya to Asanga and his disciples, which consists of sevenfold cause and effect practice of bodhicitta. Another there's a practice, given by Manjushri, followed by by Shivala, which is Shantideva, which consists of practicing equalizing and exchanging self with others. Those are the two different instructions given by those great beings, such as Maitreya and Manjushri.
어떤 디니 니가 로기 맹아들라 라마 집에 나라 요래 디니 장로 장다 디니 니가 라마 집에 책 나라 내게랬어.
So both of this practice and how to engage in this practice, what is the method to engage in this practice could be found in Lamachapa. If you have received a commentary on that, you should know the verse.
다단데 다 전주심 기타게게 아니 간사되게 아니 야다 산지 고반토베 제도 아니 저번 년내게 잡아 아니 가르치 버려서 나다단데 치지 개발되나 소야게 김바 수dim 서버 준주 상대 시럽 어디 주부디 아니 냠렌치 아드레스 전주심 기타게지.
So once one has generated bodhicitta, now just mere generated effortless or the naturally arising bodhicitta alone is again not sufficient. In order to perfect one's practice, to gain state of enlightenment in other shore of the cyclic existence or the state of enlightenment, one should then practice and perfect the practice of six perfections, as we find in this verse itself, where it says generosity, discipline, patience, perseverance, mental stability, meditative concentrations, and so on. So those six perfections must be not only practiced but perfected.
어디 진짜 말이야 대 단지 강게 짐바드다 단지 뭐게 짐바다야 단지 짐바드 저기 말대 짐바디 아니 탑 개발제 전주 승리 심비 짐바체 짐바들라 단지 짐바데 노롱주 동마자제 다르게 대한 다 꼴로 써봐 동하게 되게 짐바체 다들 대 개발을 가시지 체요를 다딩에 틀리비도 아니 수dim데 단지 강게 수dim데다 미리적인 거 줄인다 소다게 줄인다 좋아 단대디 줄인데 아니 전주심비 줄임 전주심기 줄임데 송야제 전주심비 줄인데 말을 하와를 샤이나 아니 단대 나라샤 신의 시단 제발에 도배 줄임사제 신 자세도 몇 줄임데 자동 저기를 써봐 여러 어디 송야제 아니 대화라야다 서바고야 뇌절의 지만여배 서바다 아니 가서 그래 가젤라 다 초기치도 가젤라 수배 서바라 소바체 다 되네마 대수 참말로는 예와지 요래 답하기 가서 그래 오메나라야 대수 참말로 예와지 요래 당에를 전에 샤도서 말해 아니 준주 삼네 준주 세야데 정강 결로 줘봐 와스네 최기 치도 갈래 잡으질래야 개발을 쪼슈기 바로 개발 치중 가로질래 수수 셈 쪼바다 집에 개발 쪼바다는 준주스 대세기 요래마도 지기 갈래 잡질로 정말 준주 있어 말에 최마 이발을 갈래 잡아대 갈래다 도를 장들마도 준주 있어 말에 아니 셈 찌지게 삼대대야 아니 가서 그래 학동 주야게 대제라 학동 주야게 제도 한심신의 주야 3년째 대제라야 아니 동반이기 돈달이야 죄바제라게 싫어 어디 주디 아니 전주스 몇년치 아드레스.
So speaking about the six perfections, the practice of six perfections, which begins with practice of generosity. So here now, in this practice of generosity, and the generosity, the practice of generosity that we talked about earlier is different. So the generosity, practice of generosity that we talked about earlier are mostly to giving away some, resources or giving some, wealth and something to the needy. And this is the generosity in this particular context. We're not really talking about something, it's not our generous practice, generous giving is not confined only to material gift. There are many other practices of generosity, such as even giving one's own body and parts of one's body, limbs and so forth. And there are many others, generous practice. That this practice is practice of generosity must be influenced by bodhicitta. It's not just one's very practice generosity, it's actually induced by practice of bodhicitta. Similarly, the practice of ethical discipline or morality we talked about earlier, it's different in this practice of morality again. Earlier about the morality, we talked mostly about 10 virtuous actions, 10 non-virtuous actions that is to be abandoned, and observing 10 for virtuous path. And those are the moral discipline that we talked about. But the discipline here, it's a moral discipline in this particular context. It talks about mostly, it talks of discipline, observance of moral discipline of bodhicitta. And bodhisattva's vows include bodhisattva vows such as 18, roots and secondary vows of the bodhisattva. And this will then be preceded by the perseverance, so the patience. And then also the patience, three different kinds of patience, and all the nature and the functions of those different kinds of practice of patience can be found detailed in the Madhyamaka Avatara, or the entering into middle way, entrance of middle ways. And then also the perseverance. The perseverance is not that we are persevering on any kind of thing, or also because there are many different perseverance, right? When we're working, doing things, it all requires diligence and or efforts or the perseverance. But in this particular, the perseverance here, in this particular context, the perseverance, practice of perseverance in this particular context is to one is persevering, one becoming a very perseverer of engaging in the practice of virtues, in this virtuous activity, referring to the practice of Dharma, particularly, and diligently and willfully and delightfully be able to engage in the practice of Dharma is said to be the perseverance. That's what is meant by perseverance. And then mental stability is also again here. It is a concentration, single pointed concentration. It's not all kind of single pointed concentrations. This mental stability and single pointed concentration is purely directed towards the understanding of realization of emptiness. And those are what we call the 6 practice of perfections. Perfection practice must be carried out when one has generated bodhicitta.
어디 이들 디다 소리 어디 주부 디다 되봐 근데 관계 아니 파르도 주부 디다 개발 제로 나스 데 기랑게 되디 냠내 야고나로 나스 전다 기부디 정보 라이마 제제 제다 제주 시비 갸조 이스르바 시비 갸조 말아서 코베 갸조도 제 코바들이야 코바디나야 시비 갸조 스민다네 데 파르도 침바데 아니 산제기 살바 코바네 파트스나나 산제기 살바 시비 갸조이 파르 침바 개배왕버즈 시비 갸조 파르도 침바 아니 산제기 고반 토바 제로 나스네 고블루도 비게부디 저 상벌마 담산요 데데샤스.
So therefore it says, the verse 8, let's read once again, where it says generosity, discipline, patience, perseverance, mental stability, and likewise discrimination awareness are immeasurable, far-reaching attitude. It says, expand them and make yourself into a powerful Lord of triumphant, and who has reached the far shore of the ocean of compulsive existence. In other words, it's a far shore of cyclic existence, far shore of unenlightened existence. The far shore here refers to the state of complete enlightenment. The way it says now, if one is able to carry out this practice diligently and to be able to perfect those practices, then one will be able to reach far shore of compulsive existence or the separate existence.
哦呀，到这想法了，直接点。
Let's say we stop here with this.
这个呢，这个
So we should say our dedication prayers before we leave tonight.
Yeah.
So on page 23 and 24, and continue with auspicious wishes on page 28. Tagi jine sabi gewadi tendam goa kunam Keba Jesu Rosandra Kebe Yimu Saji Uki Jushin Toka Jira Iji Eke Sanji Shindu Vike Wai Nanda Shinja Kewa Kundu Yamba Mata Tempe Chiki Dama Lonje Sadam Lambi Ten Rapsole Toji Changi Gopan Tosho Ida Guru Jena Mendela Jetsu Mane Kuzera Tenshi Naga Chile Choju Keba Losan Tebe Jene Sasumi Jome Seta Dune Kabiri Rawe Obe Shinga Endagama Jumene Chere Resi Tinzi Shari Sine Balutodi Champel Chitra Kimba Kuntuza Modi Ajite Teka Viji Jesu Karoche Wadi Taji Batu Tusum Chepe Gewa Tamcheki Mowa Kana Choduna Ade Tagi Gewe Sawa Derunya Sampo Chichi Ratu Mowa Aji
That's what it says.
Kila